Good evening, this is Atmospheric Alex here with yet another severe weather outlook and discussion video here. We're going to be talking about an upcoming active pattern going into the month of June, and of course we'll also be going on what's happening today, tomorrow, and even going into Friday as well, as we could be talking about some activity happening there. We're going to start with our Storm Prediction Center here. We're talking about a few areas, few slight risk areas here today, so kind of a hodgepodge of everything, right? These tiny little yellow areas here, 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, and your main risks here go as follows. We're talking about Kansas, Oklahoma, and Colorado here. We could be seeing a tornado or two today with some supercells will be pushing through the area. In other areas, just a 2%, so nothing much to write home about there. As we go into our wind risk here, we're going to be talking about basically the same as some of your other risks, not talking about too much, just a 15% non-significant wind risk. Hail, could see hail excess of 2 to 3 plus inches in diameter up there in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. For tomorrow, we're talking about a large 1 out of 5 marginal risk, but a tiny area getting in on it here, going off to the southwest of Dallas and Midland, San Angelo, Abilene area, Killeen, Hobbs, talking about a slight risk for severe weather. And once again, main hazards for that will include not tornadoes, not really talk about that much, just a 2%, and a little other area over here. I guess we'll just keep an eye on that, but I'm not expecting much to occur. Going into your wind, same exact thing, just a 15%. Hail, definitely could see some very large hail out there, excess of 2 to 3.5 inches in diameter with your supercells. Could even be larger in some areas. Now on to day 3 on Friday, this is very interesting here. We have a large slight risk of severe weather extending down from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, into Alabama. So certainly going to talk about a big risk of severe weather across the southeast and the mid-Atlantic areas, even to the northeast a bit there at the very end, so you can definitely see that. We're talking about mainly wind, possibly some hail. I'm not really buying it, and then definitely a tornado risk as well. Could even see a strong tornado somewhere in that risk area. Well, let's go ahead and move on with our HRRR model here to see what our radar could look like later on this afternoon. We're going to be taking a look here at some supercells trying to fire off in Kansas, starting around, it looks to be 3 to 5 p.m. Central here. Some stuff in Hayes, got stuff down near Liberal here, and even up near Goodland that could fire off. And this could promote our main risk for severe weather later on, which will really get underway here. I'm really expecting around 4 to 6 p.m. Central. Look at that supercell near Garden City and Dodge City, looking very intense there, very big hail core for sure. And these supercells will be the ones capable of producing tornadoes, so take a look at that. They do begin to cluster up, I'd say, around 7 to 9 p.m. this evening into tonight. You can see some more of your linear segments. Cells are not as discrete at this time and are starting to gust out a lot more. And really just going to be seeing a lot of wind going later on into tonight. How about further south for Oklahoma here? What are we going to be talking about? Well, we could see maybe, these supercells here move into the state of Oklahoma later on tonight. We're talking around likely 10 to 12 tonight. And you can see these really nice bowing segments of wind here developing. That's where you could see some isolated gusts upwards of 70 miles an hour traveling off to the southeast here through Oklahoma, and mainly portions of northwestern Oklahoma into central Oklahoma, and then some stuff moving into OKC, potentially in and around 4 to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. And about into Texas here, we're going to be talking about maybe the risk of a couple supercells. Look at near Waco here as we head into around maybe 3 to 5 p.m. Central this evening, but there's definitely some uncertainties with those cells. We're watching that closely. Then a few more could pop up, could definitely pose your very large hail risk, damaging winds, and maybe even a brief tornado. Couldn't rule out that as well. And look it up here in the Panhandle, north of Amarillo, trying to get on the action around 6 to 8 p.m. Central this evening. I'll just have a lot of stuff to watch here. More storms going into tonight, maybe being severe as well. How about Louisiana? That's a bit random, right? Well, you saw your risk areas there, and we could definitely be talking about some strong to severe pop-up storms this evening. Some supercells are definitely possible around New Orleans here and Baton Rouge, going in around 3 to 5 p.m. Central. And this really just continues here. You start to see this linear segment, or these two linear segments, pushing off to the north. That could contain 60 to 70 mile an hour winds with them, just like this. Moving north to Macomb here, Alexandria, Jackson, Monroe, Shreveport, going into around 6 to 9 p.m. Central this evening. Pushes off to the north just like that. And going into later on tonight, could see more storms around Gulfport and Mobile, Alabama, Mississippi here. And then also look at down here across the Gulf here. Could be talking about some pretty intense supercells pushing into southern Louisiana here, into your bayou regions. We're going to have to really monitor this, as we could see some elevated tornado potential. Look at tomorrow morning here. Lots of supercells, a little more messy in nature, but still, and this just reminds me, please turn on emergency alerts on your phone and crank your weather radios on high, because you never know. Could end up seeing a tornado or two tonight in some of these areas down south. And just look at those supercells. Very interesting, to say the least. How about your parameter space for this afternoon to evening? You could see a little bit of a vorticity maximum, I'd say, up in these areas here. And across southwestern Kansas to the panhandle of Oklahoma and the panhandle of Texas. Definitely going to be seeing your elevated values there cruising through. This right here, have a supercell latches onto that, could have a brief strong tornado opportunity. Not a forecast, but definitely could see it. And, it all just depends on storm interaction. Very mesoscale environment. That pushes through. Parameters completely die off going into 10 and 11 this evening. And that is all she wrote there. Okay, how about into tomorrow? We're expecting more storms to fire. Look at that across Oklahoma here. Some pretty strong supercells forming in around 12 to 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. That's not a forecast. That could change. So we're going to really have to keep an eye on that. Stuff across Arkansas as well could get on the action. So could see risk extensions and whatnot. Look at across Oklahoma here. Definitely a tornado risk could become underway in around 3 to 6 p.m. Central tomorrow evening. And these cells back out here across western Texas near Lubbock and then Roswell, Carlsbad, New Mexico could definitely be talking about it here. Further off to the north, further off to the south, just supercells everywhere. Not particularly strong in nature, but definitely have a tornado risk. And then a dominant supercell, a little clustered regardless, moving down into Abilene, possibly into tomorrow evening, into tomorrow night. No exact timings because this is a little uncertain. Dallas, Fort Worth, Wichita Falls could get hammered. And then a nice line of storms could be pushing on through with some damaging 60 to 70 mile an hour winds going in later on into tomorrow night. Certainly a lot on their plate out there. They've been dealing with a ton of stuff over the past few days. It has been non-stop activity for sure. How about your parameter space for tomorrow? Well, we're not talking about too elevated, but definitely some orange colors. So, especially some of your reds in here where a greater tornado risk could get concentrated. We'll have to watch those supercells down there across southern Oklahoma into northern Texas. And could potentially see a ramp up in your parameters as we get our lower level jet, our wind shear to crank up overnight. And, definitely need to be on alert for that. And then I can't forget about areas further off to the west, a more mesoscale environment, as some of those parameters do look quite juicy out there, so we'll really have to monitor this. How about into Friday here? This is going to be your mid-Atlantic and southeast risk for severe weather. This is the NAM model, so do not take this seriously, and please take it with a grain of salt. This kind of puts things into a line way too often and overdoes things as well. Talk about potentially some severe weather moving through East Tennessee. Who knows where in East Tennessee, right? Look at that near Asheville, Hickory, Charlotte, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, Roanoke. Definitely could be seeing some supercells ahead of a main line of storms that could form right back into here. We're really going to have to watch this. Storm mode is going to be a huge player going into Friday. And if we see semi-discrete supercells fire like that, along a long line like this, definitely could see a strong tornado risk in quite a few areas. We're really going to have to keep our eyes on this just in case storm mode goes a little bit haywire, because we definitely don't want to be talking about that. And yeah, definitely need to really consider this. And areas further south, these cells could remain more discrete. How about your parameter space? NAM is going to overdo it significantly, so just a fair warning. Talking about very elevated parameters here across East Tennessee definitely would be favorable for wind and tornadoes, but of course, like I said, this is not a forecast. This is too far out on an inaccurate model, so please keep that in mind. As we go later into the evening, wind shear really begins to ramp up here as a couple of your black flags begin to show up. And definitely could be talking about some of your reds and hot pink values. If you have discrete supercells, could definitely produce tornadoes, if not even strong tornadoes, in such an environment. How about further north here? If for some reason things do trend further north, again, could be talking about a tornado risk into Virginia as well that we're really going to have to watch for. And potentially even further north into Maryland and into West Virginia. Again, not a forecast, but certainly need to watch this. So how about after this? You saw in the thumbnail, I was highlighting this gigantic red area up here saying, you need to prepare. We're going to be talking about a very active pattern. Now, what does that mean, Alex, right? Are we actually going to see an active pattern of severe weather into June? Yes, the answer is yes, we absolutely will. So we have this trough out here. This is your upper level winds here we're looking at from our European model. You could see just a fairly large trough out here. We're kind of getting through this. This will bring a lot of cooler weather into the eastern US. So summer will be further delayed, unfortunately. I know it's getting ridiculous at this point. And here we go. All right, let's kind of take a look at this here. See a little bit of a tiny little trough moving through. We could definitely be talking about some severe weather starting up on Tuesday across portions of your central and high plains regions. This is definitely not a forecast yet, but look at this gigantic bowling ball trough ripping on through. And we're talking about a bit of a neutral to even negatively tilted trough ejection moving through. That's something we're really got to watch for. This does significantly weaken by the time it enters the plains. If it doesn't, we could be talking about a significant severe weather episode for a very large area in here. We're going to really be monitoring this over the next few days into next week, and this continues on through, may strengthen a little bit going on into Wednesday and Thursday, and even into Friday, and then you just get this consistent conveyor belt flow across your upper plains here. And you could definitely see this moving right on across, really favoring your severe weather chances going on through into Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, into Minnesota, and Iowa here. And definitely looking at some of those kinks there could provide a bit of a greater threat. You could see like right there, seeing a bit of a shortwave moving through here. That could really spark up severe weather. And with all your storm energy moving north at this time of year, that could definitely be a bit of an issue. And that just continues here. With your precipitation forecast, I'm trying to speed it up a little bit. You can see starting on Tuesday, got quite a classic plains event here. Nice curly Q with arcing supercells all up and down it, so certainly a tornado risk. And then continuing on through, look at these big systems of severe weather really firing up here across Oklahoma and Texas. Not as much wind shear, so just going to be talking about more wind and hail. And you could just see this continuing on through, more severe weather moving through, more severe weather, and again, and just look at that, again, just constant activity. We keep going all the way to the end of the loop, and it's just the same song and dance over and over again. Just does not stop. How about your supercell composite parameter values from your GEFS? Really begins to ramp up around Tuesday and Wednesday, some yellows in here, so potential for severe weather, and you can see that potential continues on through. Now we even get a peak of orange here, so maybe even a significant signal here starting to show up, and then just continuing on through. Stays there consistently, possibly all the way into mid-June. Certainly can and will change, so we'll have to keep an eye on the forecast. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to my little corner of the weather community, and share this video with friends and family on social media so they could stay informed about the upcoming severe weather chances going on across the central southern plains into the northern plains going into June. It's going to get very active out there. Hopefully the models can stop uptrending because, Yeah, looks quite active. And just one more thing. Really need to be watching down here in the Gulf, potentially going into mid-June. Could we see some tropical weather activity? I guess we're just going to have to wait and see, but some models have been indicating potential of maybe a weak disturbance. Some show a little stronger, but I'm going to stick with a weak disturbance for now for forecasting's sake. But definitely, if you're along the coastline, keep an eye on the models, keep an eye on your local forecasts, and even the National Hurricane Center, just in case anything gets issued. All right, stay weather aware out there, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a wonderful night, everyone.